Hello students, I am Dinesh Udupi and this is session 47 of ethology topic of molecular biology, evolution and ethology paper of 6th semester. In this session, we will understand two concepts of animal behavior which is related to the biological clock or biological rhythm, that is entrainment and Zeitgebers. Entrainment and Zeitgebers. Entrainment is the process by which the endogenous biological clock is reset or synchronized with exogenous environmental cues. In the last session, we studied biological clocks, especially the circadian rhythm. We are talking about circadian rhythm here, which is a day cycle, 24-hour cycle. Every day our activities are repeated. Commonly we call it as sleep wake cycle of the animal. All animals show this sleep wake cycle. During daytime all animals are active. They go for hunting, they go for some other activities. They go for in search of food. They move from one place to the other place. They build nest. So they show their activities, main activities during the daytime. And in the night time, almost all animals are uh, inactive, means they are taking rest in the form of sleep. So that is how the 24-hour cycle works in the animal's life. What happens? This clock, this behavior is not entirely controlled by the environment. The behavioral pattern of 24 hours is actually controlled by the molecular clock which is present in each and every part of the body, in the tissues. So internally the clock is present. That biological rhythm or biological clock is internal or endogenous. It is working from inside. It is controlled by the body itself. But sometimes, whenever it goes out of order, I mean, if this cycle is changed, right, then it has to be reset. You just think of your watch. Your watch shows the timing correctly, and sometimes when the shell is gone, right? So when the clock stops due to the loss of power, then after some time you are going to reset it. You will replace it with a new shell, and then you are going to reset the time. How you are going to reset the time in the watch or in the clock? You are going to take the information from other clock. So you are resetting your clock by using the cue from the other clock, right? And you are matching both of them. So if your own clock is your own biological rhythm, the other clock which is working like a reference, which your body is you are using as a reference, that becomes Zeitgeber, right? The environmental cues that reset or calibrate a biological clock are known as Zeitgebers. If the biological clock, the internal clock, goes out of sync, then the environmental cues like sunlight, day length, etc., they are going to help the body to reset it. Your body will reset itself by taking the reference of external environmental changes. So this is the concept of entrainment and Zeitgebers. Entrainment is the resetting of biological clock according to environmental cues. Now this concept is little bit technical, but try to understand one very important thing, that is the circadian rhythm or 24-hour cycle or biological rhythm of the body of the animal is internally regulated, but only when it goes out of sync it is going to take cue from the environment. It is not vice versa as we think in the beginning of studying biological clock. right? When we introduce you to the concept of biological clock, what we teach you is the body's activity is adjusted according to the change in the environment, right? I myself explained the biological clock in the previous session, where you may have got the impression that it is the environment which is controlling it. No, the biological clock is internally regulated and it is only taking the help of environmental changes just to reset it. So it is going on smoothly, and whenever it goes out of sync, and we use the word free run for this thing, when it goes out of sync, when the biological clock goes out of sync, it's called free run. So coming back from the free run, it takes the help of environmental changes. So that is the concept of entrainment and Zeitgebers. It is important to realize that the pattern of behavior is not a direct result of the environmental cue. This is the concept which one should understand while studying the biological clocks, right? So normally we get misled that biological clock is controlled by the environmental changes. So we have 24-hour cycle because there is a 24-hour cycle in the environment. Of course, during the course of evolution, this 24-hour cycle of the earth, I mean the in the environment, has resulted in the 24-hour cycle of the biological clock or biological rhythm. But now, after this evolution, right, so the body is capable of maintaining the clock on its own, right? So that's what I'm trying to tell you again and again. Rather, the environmental cues or gatekeepers simply act to make sure that the biological clock controlling the behavior does not get out of sync with the environment, right? So this is what I already mentioned. For instance, the reason why we feel jet lagged when we travel is that it takes a while for our biological clock to be reset to the new time zone. You know, when a person travels from one country to the other country, which is having different time zones, right? Say I live in India, and if I travel to America, which has a different time zone, let us say I travel to a place which has 12 hours difference time zone, right? If it is 8 o'clock evening here, and it is 8 o'clock morning there, right? If it is 9 o'clock here, what happens? Let us say this is it is 9 o'clock night here, and in that place it is 9 o'clock in the morning. My friend who lives there, he is getting ready to go to the college, to go to the office. But here I am getting ready to sleep. That is the difference, because his internal clock is adjusted to that environment. Remember, his biological clock is being maintained a 24-hour cycle, but it has adjusted so that the person can live, the animal can live very easily, because he can be active during daytime and he has to sleep in the night. So the body's biological clock adjusts to the environmental changes, right? So if I travel from this country to that country, just imagine, maybe I will take 6 or 7 hours or 12 hours to reach there. Now when I reach there, my internal clock will be disturbed, because for so many years I am living here and my body is adjusted to sleep in the night and to be awake in the daytime. But the problem is, I have reached that country, and it is 9 o'clock in the morning, right? But the problem is, according to my body's internal clock, the biological clock, it is 9 o'clock in the night. It tells me to go to sleep. So I start feeling sleepy when it is 9 o'clock in the morning there. Everybody is going to the office and everybody going to their work. They are active, but I want to sleep. I get sleepy. And in the night, when everybody is getting ready to sleep, I become very active because according to my biological clock, it is 9 o'clock in the morning. So this type of problem which occurs when you travel from one place to another place, I am talking about one country to another country which is having different time zones. This happens. It is called jet lag, right? But taking the environmental changes. So what I'm trying to tell you is my body has to entrain the biological clock. My biological clock, my circadian rhythm must get entrained using Zeitgebers. Now, what is Zeitgeber? The environmental cues. Since I am in that country now, my biological clock must follow those changes. So within few days, within 1 or 2 days, or within few hours, depending upon uh, the person's thing, the biological clock will get readjusted. Right after 1 or 2 days or few days, I start sleeping in the night. I mean that country's night, and I will be alert in the daytime of that country. Even though it is daytime here, I will be sleeping there. Even though it is night here, I will be awake and alert in that country. So my body's internal clock adjusted successfully to that climatic condition. So this process of adjustment is called entrainment. And how it got adjusted? It took the help of environmental changes. The daytime and nighttime of that country, it is used as a reference, right? So that climatic condition of the country is now that is considered as gatekeeper in this case. Hope the concept is clear now. Initially, our sleep-wake cycles, which are determined by an endogenous biological clock, are out of sync with the environment. That's what happens when you travel to other country. Exposure to environmental cue, such as sunlight, eventually helps to reset the underlying clock. So this is one simple example by which we can understand the concept of entrainment and gatekeepers. The concept of this gatekeepers and study of gatekeepers is a vast field, especially in humans. It is used, but here, since our topic and our scope is restricted, we will just try to understand some of the important gatekeepers or the environmental cues which help the biological rhythm to readjust. First one and most important gatekeeper is light, because daytime is represented by light and night is represented by darkness. So presence of light, sunlight, tells the body that it is daytime, and absence of sunlight, presence of darkness, is going to give some cue. So the light, presence of light, and especially the sunlight is the most important gatekeeper controlling the circadian rhythm of almost all animals. Then temperature changes may provide potential gatekeepers. During the daytime, normally the temperature is high, and in the night the temperature becomes less. So this change in the temperature, which is normally associated with the light and dark cycle, also acts like a gatekeeper in many animals. Say for example, uh, you are the animal is kept in a room where it will never understand whether it is daytime or in outside, or uh, night outside. But change in the temperature, the animal may feel the change in the temperature, and it may decide that okay, it is daytime because it is little bit hot. Now it is cold, it may be night outside. So like this, the temperature variation also affects the uh, resetting. I mean, it also works like a gatekeeper. Then social cues. Social cues from other organisms can act as gatekeepers. Here I can take the example of human beings, like work hours. going to the office, going to the school, etc., it helps us to maintain the circadian rhythm. Now, one very simple and interesting example I want to give you, how the social cues may give information to your biological clock about the time outside, about the clock. Just listen to this example. It is not, you must not write it in the exam, but this is a real experiment. Scientists, especially the psychologists, they wanted to study the circadian rhythm in the human beings. And in one of the study, what they did is the individuals were kept in a building, right? They were kept in a building and they wanted to study the biological rhythm, I mean the circadian rhythm in them, and without the environmental cues, without the gatekeepers, whether the circadian rhythm is going to be maintained as it is, or is there any changes going to happen in the absence of gatekeepers. So to remove the gatekeepers, that means to remove the clues of time, right? Clues of time. I hope you will understand this word, clue of time. Say for example, how I come to know that whether it is night or daytime. Here is the window. I just will look out of the window. If I find sunlight, it is daytime. If it is dark, then it is night, right? So I know whether it is night or day because there is a clue outside. There is a cue outside. Presence of light or absence of light. Now, if you want to study the circadian rhythm and how it is maintained in the absence of gatekeepers, first you have to remove all gatekeepers, all the cues. So to remove all those cues, what they did, they kept the persons. I mean individually. Say one individual is kept in a room. It is a room where the person cannot understand whether it is daytime or night outside because there are no windows and there is no way of knowing whether it is day or night. That is one thing. And then in the room, they just kept some books and no TV, nothing, because television will tell him what time it is and how much one program, say 1 hour program. So his body will understand, okay, now I am sitting here for 1 hour. That is also a cue that has to be removed. So no television, nothing which will tell him about the time, like clocks. Even movies are not allowed because he by experience he knows that this is a 2 hour movie, and if he watches 3 movies continuously, his body will know that it is 6 hours. So they removed everything. They just kept some books by reading which the time will not be understood. So what happened, uh, even whenever he needs some food, okay, the person who is the subject of experiment, if he needs some food, if he is hungry, he will write down the food item which he wants to eat, and he used to keep the cheat in one place and they used to collect it because even he should not come in contact with any persons, right? So they used to take the cheat and they used to provide him that particular food. So this is how the experiment was going on. Now the problem is the person who is inside the room, he doesn't know what time it is outside. And one fine day, what happened? Suddenly, the person wanted to eat idlis, right? Because the experiment was being conducted in Tamil Nadu, and idli sambar is the normal food item of that particular place. So he wrote the name of idli and sambar, and he gave the chit. But the problem was the time was 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It is a night. Now, where you are going to find hot idlis at 3 o'clock in the morning? But the problem is you cannot tell that no, you can't get idlis at this time because it becomes a gatekeeper. It becomes a cue that person will understand, oh, I cannot get idli because it is night outside. So you should not give him information that it is a night. Somehow you have to provide him. If even if it is delayed for some time, okay, he will get suspicious. Why they are getting so much of time to give me the food? Oh, maybe it is night, that's why they are having trouble. So they struggled very much, and somehow they were able to provide him the food. I just told you this example. Here the food item, what is that? Idli and sambar will work as a gatekeeper, because in everyday life we eat it in the daytime, right? In the late night you will not get idli and sambar. So if it is not available, that also may work like a gatekeeper. So as I told you, gatekeeper is a very very big field. A lot of things are there. And here when it comes to the social cues, I was just discussing about social cues. Now, the gatekeepers and social cues have a lot of meaning in the human psychology. One more example I can give you: the newly married couple, right? They have different sleeping patterns. If they have different sleeping patterns, I think you people, you students, I will tell you my own personal experience, right? Not newly married experience. When I joined my MSc course, okay, I joined a hostel, right? The university hostel. And my roommate, one of my friend, we became friends and we became roommates, right? The problem was, my habit is to study in the night, right? I used to study in the late night, and normally I used to sleep in the morning. I don't have the habit of reading in the early mornings. But my friend, his habit is opposite to my habit. He used to sleep early, say 9:30, and then he used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and he used to study. Now, this is the clash, right? Because my sleep pattern and his sleep pattern is different. So, if I uh, go on reading, because I have to switch on the light, right, in the room, it will affect his sleep. And when I am sleeping very happily at 4 o'clock in the morning, he will get up and he will switch on the light, and it will disturb my sleep, right? So this is also an example, and such problems will lead to some abnormal mental conditions like depressions, etc., etc. So it is a big field in the human psychology. Let us not worry about that. Let us just concentrate on the social cues. All right. So it must get entrained somehow. It must get entrained for smooth going on. Otherwise, it will lead to some conflict and the other things. So that is the importance of entrainment and gatekeepers. Photo period, the length of the photo period can affect the entrainment. Photo period means the length of the light during the day. Short photo period and long photo periods are there. Uh, Even though not in animals, in plants you see the flowering plants, right? The flowering happening when the short photo period approaches, and some plants will show flowering when the long photo period approaches. Like this photo period also is going to affect, is going to act like a gatekeeper. uh, some other information related to gatekeepers: extreme variations, 23-hour daylight or dark in polar areas. Okay, now I am living in India, where normally I get equal amount of day and night time. So light and dark time is almost equal. But there are some places on the earth like polar areas where 6 months it is day only. The sun never sets, right? Continuous 6 months it is daytime, and continuous 6 months it is dark. Then how the environment is going to act like a cue for circadian rhythm in that area? So a lot of experiments have been conducted, and they have shown that if one point you remember, the organism are capable of maintaining their biological rhythms even in the absence of environmental cues. or even the environmental cues are not exactly correct. Say for example, I told you in India, let us say we have 12-hour daytime and 12-hour night. Suppose I move on to a European country where the daytime is only 8 hours and night is 16 hours. No problem. Even though it is changed, the daytime and nighttime is changed, my body will maintain biological rhythm correctly. It will act like a gatekeeper. Now, how much flexible it is? So scientists who conducted experiments say that sometimes you can say 23 hours of darkness and 1 hour of light can also help to maintain circadian rhythm. In one experiment they are told, but it is very extreme. So if the environmental cues are this much extreme, like the whole day only light for many days, then the internal clock is going to be affected. So then, as I told you, it will enter into a free run. So the animal becomes active 24 hour. It must not be active 24 hour. It must be sleeping. Since the whole day, I'm talking about the polar areas where the uh, the place is having 6 months continuous daytime. All right, continuous daytime. So, extreme conditions will definitely affect. Many experiments are there. Fixed feeding pattern acting as gatekeeper in sparrows. This is one very interesting experiment done by Stiger et al. In 2013. What they did is uh, they maintained in a normal day, sparrows have circadian rhythm of 24 hours. They used to feed the birds in a particular time of the day. So they created a pattern of feeding uh, in the normal day. The birds have taken the feeding pattern as a gatekeeper along with the environmental cue. Now what they did is, once the feeding timing, the food providing time is established as a gatekeeper for the sparrows, they changed the environmental cues. They kept the birds in artificial environment where they went on changing the length of the daytime, the length of the light hours and the length of the darkness. But they maintained the correct feeding pattern which they started earlier. So even though the lighting, I mean the presence of light and the absence of light, the light and dark period is variation, it changed, the birds maintained correct biological rhythm because now they started taking the feeding habit as the gatekeeper. Like this, uh, atmospheric conditions, other atmospheric conditions, they can also be used as gatekeepers. Medication in human being, I am talking about medications, regular medications, taking pills morning, afternoon, evening, before sleep, like that. So this also will become a gatekeeper. The body will understand. The body will reset itself using the medications which enters into your body. Temperature variations, which I already discussed. Then social interactions, I mentioned you, right? Social interactions. In case of human beings, regular exercises will also tell your body. Say if you are doing exercise regularly in the morning, then suppose if you do exercise, then your body will think that it is daytime, something like that. Eating and drinking patterns. I gave you the example of the birds, the experiment which was conducted by Steger on the sparrows. So like this, many gatekeepers. I hope you understood the concept of gatekeeper, right? It's a very beautiful concept, and there are examples, innumerable examples, which we can go on discussing. Now, just to conclude, I just want to define what is entrainment. It is the resetting of biological clock by environmental cues. And the environmental cues that help to reset the biological clock are called gatekeepers. So that's about this session where we understood the concept of entrainment and gatekeepers. Thank you.